So thank you very much for accepting it. And the context is I have some questions. Most of them are regarding the challenges of the mental and physical health of today in this
hmm
period of time where we have so many conflicts. So how you see how can how do you see these challenges of physical and mental health in present world with all those conflicts that are ongoing, with all the wars?
Yeah. Well, so the more anxiety there's in a person, the more their physiology gets affected. Their hormones, their nervous system, their guts, their heart, every aspect, their blood pressure, like everything, your immune system. Number one. Number two, when there's tremendous pressure from the outside, when there is conflict, uncertainty, um, aggression in society, the that's going to trigger anxiety inside a person. Number three, the degree of anxiety depends very much on how much internal self-regulation there is, how much the person can be grounded in themselves, or to what degree they're affected by what happens on the outside. Now, we're all affected by the world, but two people can be affected to different degrees depending on how much internal grounding they have. And that means how much of an internal self they're capable of generating. So, for a lot of people, that's very minimal.
Mm.
So, there's all kinds of studies on the effect of social turmoil or economic insecurity on the health of the individual. And
Yes.
so, that's the relationship.
I have the sense that we don't realize how interdependent we are on each
Yeah,
other. And in many ways, the external conflicts become part of smaller communities. So there is like a mirroring effect that also happens in smaller communities that I observed.
yeah.
Do you think that it's normal in a way that when there is a larger conflict, it comes down and boils down to the smaller conflicts, community conflicts, even in family conflicts?
Well, again, it depends on how much internal grounding there is. But um, if you look at the United States right now, for example, um, because of the political disagreements, families are having a hard time sitting down with each other.
Absolutely.
Or you can see it in Jewish communities where there's been tremendous um, and growing distress over what's happening in the Middle East. But people have a hard time talking to each other, and it's very painful for a lot of people. So yeah, so general political turmoil or conflict will translate into familial conflicts, and that'll have an impact on individual health.
Mm. What is the most essential habit or pillar that is necessary to live with everything that we have today on our plate? I hear you saying groundedness, which depends on the individual.
Yeah.
How can we work toward that groundedness?
Well, that depends on what issues you're dealing with, but certainly in the world that I understand, all of us are troubled by multi-generational traumatic imprints, and the more we can work on those, the less we'll be at the mercy of our unconscious. Number one. Number two, um, it's really a very difficult line between being engaged with the world, but not being overwhelmed by the world. And I think that takes, for me at least, that takes some daily practice. Uh, some
Absolutely.
breath, some breath work, some, I'm a very poor meditator, but some degree of meditation, some disengagement so that I can stay engaged without being overwhelmed. And it's very easy for the personality to get pulled in by
Absolutely.
outside forces. And you can see in like in a society in major crisis, like say Germany in the 1920s, 1930s, the tendencies for people to suppress their individuality and to just belong to the group and to give up any sense of individual thinking, morality, or capacity to hold on to human values. So there's a tremendous tendency to try and regulate your anxiety by belonging to the group by suppressing your own independence.
Yes. And this can take us beyond our humanity if we don't keep it regulated with our own practice. Is it what you say?
Yeah, yeah.
So to keep our own practice, whatever it is that helps us to stay maybe connected to ourselves and also to the world without getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, some kind of practice. For some people, that might be meditation. For other people, it might be other spiritual work. It might be yoga. Could be nature. Could be journaling. But something that keeps you, that gives you a space from constant, and of course, constant involvement with the world. And the other problem is, of course, is the social media, which is like we carry the world in our hands all the time, and it's so easy to get lost in the external world.
Hmm. What is it that you do to keep yourself grounded? Is the daily practices that you mentioned, is there anything else that is important?
Well, these days I do. I haven't always, but these days, for the last couple of months, I begin every morning. I don't open up my cell phone first thing I wake up. It's on airplane mode.
Oh,
And it
yes.
stays on airplane mode until I sit down and read a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu epic, and some other reading, and a bit of breathing, and just even a few moments of meditative awareness. And only only after I make my breakfast and sit down do I open up the cell phone,
Hmm.
And most days I'll do a meditative yoga exercise before I go to bed. And several times a day I do just a very short breath practice.
Yes.
That's what I
Just like,
that's what I do these days.
hmm. Thank you. Wonderful. And how can we, or how should we reconnect to joy after having lived a traumatic experience? Is that possible to reconnect with joy?
I have no idea. Um, I'm just reading a book here. It's by a psychologist called Alan Shore, Schore, and he's
Mhm.
one of the leading thinkers about human development. He's been an influence on my work for 30 years. And his most recent book is called The Right Brain and the Origin of Human Nature. And it's about
Mm.
how the the right brain, which is the emotional brain and the intuitive brain and the holistic brain, develops before the left brain, both in terms of human evolution, animal evolution, but also in terms of the individual human being. And that right brain is so programmed by our early experiences, beginning in utero in the first year or two with our nurturing caregiver. Now, I didn't have a whole lot of joy in the first 2 years of my life. And I don't find joy an easy state to get to. So I don't,
Mm.
I can't, and it's, um, I know they tell me it's possible, and the mystics talks about this ecstatic joy that you get from that unitary experience of self-realization. But honest to God, I'm not familiar with it. And so I'm not here, I can't guide anybody to joy. It's not a state that I know very well.
Hmm. Have you met with joy in your life?
Personally,
Hmm.
yeah, moments. Um, but it's not something I can easily talk about.
Hmm.
I just don't, I don't think my right brain is organized that way. No, that doesn't mean that the possibility isn't there.
Yes, I hear
Maybe
you.
I'll have, I just read an article on near-death experiences or the dying experience, and apparently Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, as he was dying, he said, oh wow, he saw something. Maybe in my last millisecond on Earth, I don't know, but I
Yes.
don't, what I cannot do is guide anybody else to joy,
What are you guiding people to?
self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Could
To see,
self-awareness
sorry.
be, or could self-awareness be one step toward joy?
When I get to joy, I'll let you know. But lack of self-awareness means that you're not in you can't guide yourself without self-awareness. You just kind of pushed and pulled by the unconscious.
Hmm. If our body knows and remembers, is there any way to soften the impact that any traumatic experience had on our bodies?
Well, first of all, uh, yeah. So again, just recall what I how I see trauma is trauma is not what happens to you, it was happens inside you.
Yes,
And not only is it what happens inside you, it's what you still carry about the past. So I can be in an interaction with somebody and have a certain bodily reaction that has nothing to do with the present moment.
absolutely.
That is triggered by the present moment, but isn't caused by the present moment. But once I realize that, now until I realize that, I think I'm feeling this way because she said this or they did that or they didn't do that. If I can recognize that this body state that I'm experiencing right now is actually an old imprint, then I can have some distance between myself and that body reaction.
Mhm.
And so then, yes, that can be let go of. That's where
This is
self, that's what
that
self-awareness, that's when self-awareness comes in.
absolutely. This is what I wanted to add. That here is self-awareness.
Yeah, yeah,
When I know what's happening inside,
yeah,
what I am reacting to.
yeah. And you notice that you are not the reaction.
Exactly.
Because as long as we're just reacting, we are the reaction. That's all there is the reaction. As soon as you notice, oh, then you're no longer the reaction. You're no longer identified with the reaction.
Yeah. Our language doesn't help a lot because we say that I am angry, like I am
Yeah.
anger.
Yeah, as opposed to I have anger or there's anger. You know what the Buddha says, like the Buddha says to his bhikkhus, his monks, he says, when there's anger in the body, he doesn't say that the bhikkhu, the monk, doesn't get angry. He doesn't say that. He says, when there's anger in the monk recognizes that there's anger in me. To say that there's anger in me is different from saying I am angry.
Exactly.
Because
There's a
with the I am
I,
angry, there's an identification with the emotion of anger.
mm. Yes. When regarding food addiction, work addiction, or any type of addiction that holds us in a pattern, would self-awareness be the key to overcome it, or would it be something else?
Well, self-awareness is not enough. It's essential, but it's not enough. I mean, any addiction is driven by some need. So food addiction is driven by a need um, for something, stress release or feeling a sense of emptiness inside. Um,
Yes, or not wanting
so,
to feel.
so being aware of that is a necessary step, but it's not enough. You also have to say, well, what is this need? And how can I feel that need through some healthy way? And and also to recognize that need is not an is a traumatic imprint.
When we walk this path, we recognize the need and we find maybe meaning in it.
Mm. That's right. That's right. Because all addictions are aimed at meeting genuine needs. The need is not for the food, but if there's a sense of deficient emptiness inside, we do have a need for fulfillment,
Mm,
or if an opiate gives you a sense of peace, you don't have a need for the opiate. Your addicted mind thinks it does,
yeah,
but you do have a need for peace. That's a genuine human need.
and it's the same with alcohol and other substances.
And any addiction, I don't care what it is, pornography, bulimia, self-cutting, alcohol, they all serve some kind of need. They serve a genuine need. At least they're trying to substitute for a genuine need.
Yes, absolutely. Hmm. You said in many times in previous interviews that you believe that healing is available for everyone and
Yeah.
salvation except yourself. How are you standing today with this statement?
Well, wait a minute. I don't say that anymore. I used to believe that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people out there who think that they're so uniquely hurt and so devastatingly hurt that they can't heal. That belief itself is an impact of trauma. And I used to believe that about myself. I don't any longer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What changed? If it is possible to say. If not,
I mean, what's changed? I mean, give up the idea that healing is some endpoint
okay. Yes.
because then you think, I'm not at the endpoint yet. I'm not totally healed yet. Therefore, it's impossible. But if healing is a process, which is what it is, healing is actually a process, then it doesn't matter how bad I might feel at any moment. If I look at where I was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 10, or God forbid, 40 years ago, there's a huge change. There's a lot of stuff I don't do anymore. I don't believe in anymore. It doesn't bother me anymore. So, yeah. So, it's just the belief itself is a traumatic imprint. That's all it is. It's not nothing to do with reality.
Hmm.
And
Thank you.
often when I just spoke at a conference in San Diego on Friday, today's Monday, um, and people come up and say, is healing possible for me? So I asked them, well, compare yourself to where you were 10 years ago. Are you the same person? No, I'm much more self-aware. Well, then you've just answered your own question.
I love that. Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah. So you will be coming to Spain. Is this the first time that you come to Spain?
No, it's the first time I've come to speak, but I've visited Spain twice before. was in Barcelona once for a film on psychedelics, and that was
Oh,
many years ago. And then my wife and I visited Spain some years ago. We were in Andalusia and Barcelona and a few other places.
mm.
But this is the first time coming to speak.
It's the first time you come to speak on the 31st of May,
That's correct, yeah.
organized by Estim, and you will be here in person with Saddaram Kaur,
That's correct.
the the director of Compassionate Inquiry, and it's going to
Yeah.
be a one-day Compassionate Inquiry. Can you
Workshop.
summarize? Hmm?
Workshop, yeah.
Workshop, yes, a one-day workshop. So
Yeah.
how can you summarize this therapeutic approach and what makes it different from other ones?
Well, you know, when I look at the different modalities of trauma treatment, and there's many of them, um, they're all based to some extent on the personality of the person who founded them. Then they create a method out of themselves. A method that reflects their own particular talents and insights and capacities. So I don't compare them one with the other. It's just, and there isn't one that works for everybody. Now, this particular compassion inquiry does reflect my own personality, which is um, I like to ask questions. And I do believe that the answers are inside everybody, so that it's not for me to tell you what's true about you, but for you to discover what is true about you. But two elements that are important in that self-discovery are genuine curiosity. Like curiosity says, I don't know, but I want to find out. But compassionate curiosity, because without compassion, we're in defensive mode and we protect ourselves and we don't want to look at what's painful. We defend against what's painful. So compassion inquiry is simply a method by which the the right questions are asked so that the answers can emerge from the individual in a setting of compassion where they feel safe, they're not going to be judged, and they'll be helped not to judge themselves. Um, and now all of this is based on a certain perspective, which is that there's nothing wrong with anybody fundamentally, that many of the problems that we face in life, whether they're relational, psychological, emotional, or physical illness in many cases, reflect early traumas and our defenses and our attempts to escape from trauma, from the impacts of trauma. But those early adaptations, which were necessary for the small child, are self-defeating for the adult. So it's a question of recognizing compassionately how we adapted to early situations, which adaptations no longer serve us as adults, they get in our way. So we have to have some awareness. And how do you get to that awareness? Through a compassionate process of inquiry. That kind of sums it up.
Mm.
But also to add, it's very body based because we talked about the body earlier, and all of this is held in the body. So just talking about it intellectually isn't going to release anybody. It's helpful, but it's not enough.
Yeah, we need the body with us when we want to
Well,
release something.
yeah.
Hmm. Why do you think it's so impactful, compassionate inquiry with people who suffer chronic diseases or are dealing with
Well,
addictions?
oh, well, so if you look at chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, um, they're not just biological events. In fact, they reflect, and there's all kinds of studies relating the more trauma in a person's childhood, the more they're likely to have autoimmune disease. It's not even controversial. Not that doctors don't know that, but only because they don't look at the science. Um, the And there's certain personality adaptations, and which have to do with self-suppression, suppression of healthy anger, suppression of one's individuality in order to belong and to be acceptable. That self-suppression ends up because of the mind-body unity, because our psychological and emotional states are connected to our physiology. That emotional, psychological self-suppression also disorganizes the immune system. Now, that also means that healing the psychological, emotional aspects can heal the physiology. And I've seen people heal from rheumatoid arthritis, from lupus, from multiple sclerosis. Other people have seen it. So, in other words, um, when I see somebody with autoimmune disease, if I'm not working as a physician anymore, but if I was, yes, I'd give them the medication that they need to deal with the inflammation, to reduce the pain, and I would also help them work on their psychological, emotional issues so that those medications will no longer be necessary. And I've seen many cases like that.
Mm. So who is this workshop on the 31st of May is for? Is it for
I
healthcare
don't know.
professionals,
Anybody-
psychologists?
I think there'll be a lot of therapists there, but it's for everybody because I don't talk differently to therapists than when I talk to the general public. And I hope to speak in a way that holds both their attention. And so I think you have to ask the organizers who their intended audience is, but usually I speak to everybody, and I don't speak differently to one group than to another.
I think it's for everybody, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And will you be offering some signatures for your book? This is a Spanish edition of your book,
El mito de
The
la
Normalidad.
normalidad. Yeah, no, yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, sure. If there's time, I'm happy to sign books. Yeah.
Hmm. What would be the last thing that you would say to the readers that you think is important to
Well,
mention?
only what we've covered before that whatever you think, there's fundamentally nothing wrong with you, and as long as it's consciousness, um, self-awareness and healing are possible.